Have you read 1,000 management books but still feel like you're failing? What if, as an entrepreneur, you gave yourself the grace to let go of managing people? If you want to learn more, you'll want to listen to today's episode. This is Bad Boss Confessional, and I'm your host, Beth Fahey. If you've ever thought, I could have handled that better, you're in the right place. I've been a boss for decades, and I've learned the most from the moments I wish I could forget. Each week, we hear from leaders who've been there, who've messed up, made changes, and came out stronger on the other side. Hey, everybody, meet Jim Coyle, an expert EOS implementer and one of the few coaches at EOS Worldwide. He's also the founder of Nexus Accelerator, which is a masterclass in EOS implementer coaching. Jim was my coach when I first went to boot camp at EOS Worldwide, and he had a huge impact on my development as a business coach. Welcome, Jim.
Thank you. Thank you. I was trying to get you in my screen here, so sorry you're moving around on me. This is awesome. I am excited to be with you, Beth. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you know, on this podcast, we share our cringiest moments of being a boss. And I know because we've talked about our shared history in food service and, all kinds of other sort of similar businesses, that you've struggled with some of the same stuff that I've struggled with. And so, did you think of a story to confess today that would be helpful for our guests?
I'll let your guest decide. I think so. I feel like this is a arc of a story that I've heard from other entrepreneurs, and I feel like it actually has been freeing for some yeah, I think there might be something there. We'll see.
All right, let's start at the beginning. Give me some background on your history as a boss and as a leader and manager, if you wouldn't mind.
I have run, I think, 12 of my own companies. Also have run other people's companies. And so I'll give you a little bit of that, try not to go too far back. When I was 4, I sold candy bars, which I did, but we'll maybe move it a little farther forward. In high school, there was like a lot of beaded jewelry then. I started seeing these people buying this beaded jewelry, and I'm like, I can do that. And so I started making beaded jewelry in high school and pretty much selling it out of my locker. I was like one of those kids, Beth, where I'd open the locker and be like, hey, see my wares. And so I was that dorky kid. But I sold a lot of stuff, and it actually helped. And then into college, I still sold jewelry. I had a couple jewelry stores in town actually by my line, they kept calling it, which I thought was funny. I had a line of jewelry, of course.
Yeah.
This is a part of the story you probably don't know, actually, Beth. And then it was cool because I got to meet women in college, which was what I was interested in. So I had like these bead boards, and I would go into like sorority houses, and they would buy my stuff. And my promise, and this is really big to them, my promise was there would never be another one like it. So they would buy something and be completely unique. And it was funny because they would tell me all about how embarrassing it was they'd wear the same dress as their friend. And I just thought that was cool, but I decided not to say that. And so did that for a while. It was really enjoyable. And then in college, I started a paint contracting company as well. And that was fun. I had 3 crews of paint contractors. And that would be probably my first real take into bosshood, if that's a term. You would know all the right terms, but I'm gonna steal it today.
Sounds good to me.
I'm gonna coil it. You can coin words. I'll coil them. And so 3 crews, and I thought I had some great ideas, and I hired one of my friends. And so here's a mini story. I thought I had a great idea that what I would do is I would pay all the painters whatever I determined was the quote. Like, here's the quote. I will pay you for that. If you get it done faster at a high quality, I'll pay you that amount. And if you're slower, then you don't get paid as much. And some of my crews that worked for, and some of them didn't. And one of my friends worked in one of the crews it didn't work for. She was in a slower crew, and she felt like there was a couple other keywords I don't want to say on the podcast, but she thought I was screwing her and shafting her. And I was like, we set this up from the beginning. This is just what I'm doing with everybody else. It'd seem unfair if I did it. She said, but I was her friend and all these things.
Mm.
We didn't talk much after that. So, but that approach did work. But I found I definitely was struggling with keeping my crews, motivated and doing the right things. And so that was the beginning of my struggles as a boss. And jump in at any time because I can get going with story time. You know me. Please.
So hiring friends.
Yeah, yeah, okay. This is a good one.
Yeah, I mean, we see it all the time. I experienced it. Hiring family too. That's the other classic move that entrepreneurs
You know
make.
both.
Yeah, I do. I do know both. I guess that's why I'm doing what I'm doing now, right? It's
Well,
because
and that's where really my story goes, how I ended here as well in some regards. But hiring friends and family adds complication. And so here's something I tell everybody now, and this has been really good for me, is that if you're going to add complexity or complication, it has to have more value than the complication is adding or the complexity is adding. And so if you're adding complexity, is there enough value to actually tend to that complexity? Because adding family adds complexity. Let's not kid ourselves. I've had people say it's easier, and we've greatly pushed into the fact that they were full of it. And so it adds complexity. But if you can get that value out of that, great. But I do think there has to be even more clarity with that. And there wasn't with my friend. Mistake one of many to come. And as I started to move into other entrepreneurial things that I was doing, the one where I feel like I came to really the story I want to get to was I ended up buying a bar and restaurant in Chicago. And I had worked at Anderson Consulting at the time, that then became Accenture, not the Arthur Anderson, the criminals, whoops, but the Anderson Consulting Group that's still around. And I was working for them, and I was a boss there too. But what was interesting there is that all my team knew more about what they were doing than I did. So I was managing a bunch of IT people, and in some regards that was easier because I couldn't manage them from their specifics, but really from more of a high level. And I did okay from that standpoint, but still not great, Beth. Nobody was writing me up as the world's best boss at that time. I did not a lot of plaques. Let's just say that for Jim Coyle. But still thinking, I believe our society has this misnomer, and the misnomer is that you've arrived when you manage people. Like, oh, now you're something. Now it's and I don't think that's true for everybody. I don't actually think that is where everybody needs to arrive. I think
Mm.
arriving, and this is something I say to my clients, and you say something probably pretty similar, is when they're bringing their gifts to the world, when they're really living their true selves, and they're absolutely bringing what their gifts are supposed to be bringing to the world. And through my stories that I'm about to tell you, I found that mine wasn't management. And so running my bar and restaurant in Chicago for a number of years, really hard. All the stuff you hear about Chicago being corrupt is true. And
Come on.
it is. That's another podcast or at least another beer with you and me later. But the idea is it's just crazy. Some of the stuff that I went through, dealt with 3 different mobs and dealt with some aldermen that some would say were shady. 2 of them went to prison, multiple people at the city that were ridiculous. And so it's not ideal. Hopefully the Tribune's not listening to your podcast. What I found though, as I started to deal with that stuff, is that really managing my team, and I had a big team for a while. I had around 30 employees. I just wasn't great at motivating them, not great at motivating them to really connect to the bigger picture. I think EOS would have helped me. Looking back, I say, would have EOS have helped? Yeah, but I don't think my gifts were being used fully. I started to realize as years ago, we use this in EOS. I had read something that a manager should be talking 20% of the time, and his employees should be talking 80% of the time.
Yeah.
And I read this around the near where I was soon to sell my restaurant. And I started thinking about it. I'm like, wait. And this is what I thought, Beth. They mean 80% I'm supposed to be talking, right? That's what it means. I'm pretty sure that's what it means. Right? And I literally went back to reread it. It's not what it meant. It meant 20% of the time I was talking. Like, oh crap, I have this thing flipped on its head. And that was the very first, poke in my balloon as being a manager. And so I started to dig in about other things that made for great managers. Okay, I believed still that's what I was supposed to do. I was supposed to manage people because I still felt very entrepreneurial, and I've never heard of entrepreneurs not managing people. That's just what us entrepreneurs we have to do. We have to manage people. I was like, oh God, like everything I started to see more and more, I started to see, man, I don't know if I'm built for this. And it worried me because I felt like I was right as to be an entrepreneur. I maybe hadn't found exactly what that was, but I feel like I hit that right. And it didn't correspond with my view of what an entrepreneur was, Beth. Like this is what a picture, this is what an entrepreneur does. And I didn't know how to sync
Mhm.
those. It was really hard for me. And so I sold my business, and I was at this interesting place in my life. Anyways, my dad was sick, and I had sold my business in my house in Chicago, and I was homeless, jobless. I wasn't dating anybody, but my dad was sick, and I was like, maybe I'll come home and just take care of dad, try to get him in a good spot. He had Alzheimer's, and so try to
Mhm.
get him into a place where he would be safe. He wasn't safe at home. And I lived at my childhood home for a little bit, and I just was like, where the hell do I go from here? I
Mhm.
had no idea. And I was really struggling to kind of find my next thing there. But I had made two promises to myself when I came back into Kalamazoo. That's where I am now. I moved from Chicago to Kalamazoo. Of course, if you don't have a job and you're not dating anybody, I mean, Kalamazoo, that's where everybody thinks. And so that's not what everybody thinks if you haven't been to Kalamazoo. It's a lovely city. Um, but I said, okay, I'm going to work for somebody else. And if for some reason I break rule one, then I won't have any employees. So those were my two rules. And I interviewed with a couple companies, and I was given offers. And finally, the last one, which felt like a really great job, it was with soccer. It was a guy I knew. We weren't friends, so I wasn't jumping into that, but it was a guy I knew well enough that I trusted him. And it was really going to be a great job. I just looked at him after he had offered me the job. I just looked at him and I said, oh my God, Mike, I just realized I don't think I can work for anybody else. I don't think I'm capable of working for anybody else. Because right now, as you're offering me this job, like I'm freaking out. And so it was really funny to tell somebody, I think probably one of the first times I told somebody I was freaking out. I wasn't very open and honest about my emotions probably at that point. And so I realized that I needed to figure out my thing, Beth. And I started a company, and right away I hired somebody. So I broke both my rules that I promised
Mm.
myself that I would do. And luckily, that person was self motivated because, once again, I was doing a bad job of managing. And her and I talked a lot, and I started talking to coaches. I started getting a coach, and I realized that I could be me and be an entrepreneur and not manage people. There had to be a way.
Mhm.
And what was interesting is at the time I was helping people to be better leaders and managers. And so my new description for myself, Beth, is I'm the 5'5" basketball coach, the Van Gundys, if anybody remembers the 90s. And I am not built to be one, but I really am great at helping people to become one. And
Mm.
so I realized that's where I needed to be. And then through my work, found my way ultimately to EOS. It was hard for me to work through the fact that I could own my own company and I even have people who work for me that I don't manage. And that's been amazing. It's been really transformative. I'm doing what I'm meant to be doing.
So the person that you hired to essentially manage the other people, at the time, did you call it an integrator or
I
general
didn't.
manager?
Yeah, I'll be honest. I didn't know these words. I mean,
Mm.
general manager. I heard. Sorry, you said general
Yeah.
manager there at the end. Then I felt a little dumb. Yeah, I heard a general manager. But I didn't. I didn't understand that. And this is actually the very first time was with my assistant. I should have her watch this. And I remember telling her that at the end of the day, she's not doing good work if I have to manage her. And at the
Mm.
end of the day, I wasn't good at it anyways. And so it wasn't going to work if I needed a manager. She needed to manage me. And if I think that's the difference between if EOS implementers are listening, between an assistant and a practice manager, what we call practice managers. I think practice managers manage us. And so I had that conversation with her. She was my fourth assistant because the other ones that I had gotten were great assistants, but they needed to be managed. And I just didn't like doing it. And so not only was I not good at it, I just started to realize I didn't like doing it. So I didn't. I just stopped doing it. Some people just weren't being managed. They weren't getting my time. But I was a pretty good leader, right? And we always divide leader from management. And I felt like I was good leading, but I just wasn't the management skills. So if you're EOS, you know that the five leadership practices and the five management practices, the five management practices don't come as naturally to me. I do quarterly conversations, and we
Hmm.
both do. So Jessica does for me, and I do for Jessica. That is my practice manager. But the idea is it's more feedback and less around management, to be honest. But otherwise, I just don't do the other ones right. And so right now for my practice, Jessica, I have a practice manager, and for my business, the Nexus accelerator and cohorts, Jessica is the integrator. Now that I've learned those terms, she is the integrator of the company, and has final say and all of that. And I sit as the visionary in that company.
That is such a relatable story. I have just experienced exactly what you're talking about. And I have Jackie, who's my practice manager. And this is the first time that I have not had to sit on somebody's head, honestly, and just, tell them what to do. Like, this is, I need this. And and what this points to is something that we teach in EOS, which is called GWC, gets it, wants it, capacity to do it. And when you have people that truly GWC the seat, gets it means that they literally get it. They are wired for it. Like, if you show them their job description or you show them their seat on the accountability chart with their 5 accountabilities, somebody that gets it is like, yep, got it, got it, got it. Like, you don't have to explain it to them. They see that, and it actually energizes them when somebody gets it. Wants it is, you can't fake that. You have to genuinely want it. People bring the energy to the role if they truly want it. And then capacity is the acquired ability to do the role. And it's, do they have the intellectual capacity? Quite honestly, some people, don't have the mental acuity for the role after a certain point, or the emotional capacity, especially if they're managing people, physical capacity in that they can do the work without it, being a struggle for them in a physical way. And that can extend to computer screen, staring at a computer screen. And then lastly is the time management, and that they can manage their time well enough. And the reason I wanted to, talk about this at a deeper level, this GWC part, is in our world in EOS, really should be a yes, yes, yes on all of those. And where I see most managers struggling is they're trying to make a silk purse out of a sow's ear, in that the person that is in front of them is just not wired to do what they're asking them to do. They don't have the God-given talent. They don't, we want them to. And so the tell for me is always when you have to constantly go back to somebody, constantly beat yourself up that you haven't trained them enough. That's a pretty good indicator that they don't get it or they don't want it, which is sort of a deal breaker. Capacity you can work with for a little while, but not forever. And so, anyway, I didn't mean to, drop
No,
into a great boss workshop here, but I just think that that concept is so illuminating, and it relieves so much of the pressure when you realize, I love this person. They're just not right for this role. And you decided that you were not right.
right?
You didn't have GWC for the role as a manager. And sometimes that introspection, it comes, when we're well into our careers.
Yeah, I won't tell you how long, but for sure it took me longer. And so I think my emotional intelligence was lacking. And that's definitely a skill I think you can gain. I've heard people say, no, that you're born with that. I think that's
No.
BS completely. That is something I've seen people gain. I know I have grown in that capacity. And it takes that because I'm a no, no, no when it comes to management. And I can fake it for a little bit. I can help, manage a situation or a project or something like that, and it will go fine. But no one's saying at the end, like, oh, that was so buttoned up. That was so perfect. And so
Hmm.
I think there's things we have to manage in life that we can't avoid. But I do think that generally speaking, I avoid those things because right now I'm trying to focus on just the things I love and I'm great at. And, pointing to another EOS tool of delegate and elevate. But if I can focus my energy there, I think that's where I'm really bringing my gifts. And so, if you struggle with this, I just would tell you that it's hard, but it's liberating. Oh God, I felt lighter. I felt like, okay, now I just have to figure out how to do this. Wait, so this is right and this is right. I just didn't think they equaled. I didn't think I could be an entrepreneur because I felt that was so true, and not be a manager. I didn't think that was possible. I thought I had to be both. And when I found I didn't have to be, I'm like, well, right, like the clouds parted for me. And I think a lot of my visionaries come to these same conclusions. And I've followed that path. So I have this great empathy for them that, boy, it's tough. But you don't have to do it all. Just figure out what you're awesome at and just stay there. Ah, we so much better.
This is great because one of the things that I see often with visionaries is after they implement an operating system like EOS and they start getting their time back, they don't know what to do with themselves. They don't know how to bring value, or they don't think that what they do as far as bringing value is as valuable as it is, which is pushing the company forward, making sure that, we're always looking at, where we're going. Are we on track for that? Obsessing about culture, like all the things that they do naturally, they discount because it's so easy for them. And the truth is that companies need that. And so embracing those unique abilities that visionaries have is one of the things that I find that I'm coaching them, especially when we get into about 9 months to a year of this process. You start to see them, what should I do now? I don't understand. And so sometimes in desperation, they claw it back. Did you ever struggle with that?
Yeah, for sure. Because I hadn't come to the conclusion that it was possible yet, and when I hadn't come to that conclusion, I just kept thinking I had to do this.
Right.
Um, I needed a paradigm shift. Really, I mean, this was for me a real big paradigm shift. And it's funny because some people are thinking like, duh, but I wasn't as smart as you. I just needed to figure that out. And so, yeah, I kept trying to claw my way back into it. And I can do this. I, I train people on this. I know exactly what it is. What's interesting is like theoretically, I know exactly what it means to be a great manager. I really do. I feel like I've read every management and leadership book, trying to be, in some regards, my failure as a manager actually pushed me to really understand exactly what that looks like. And so theoretically, I know exactly what that looks like, but that doesn't get you there. And so there's, that's the thing about traction that's beautiful is Gino took the theory and then made it real. That helped liberate me. And I will say that, I'm still finding my way to, completely being liberated in many other things. But this is one I just feel like I've been able to let go. But I did start to try to claw that back and try to figure out ways like, okay, I can do this. Like I'll read 1,000 management books and I'll get it all figured out. Yeah, none
Mhm.
of it worked. At the end of the day, I'm actually working with a visionary right now, exact problem that you just laid out. And I was saying, these are things that some of my visionaries do. And I say every one of them struggles with this. They're letting go of the stuff that you've always done and we're probably never all that good at. And he's like, fine, is actually what he said. And I said, really the question, which is hard, but I really want you to spend some time on it, is what beauty are you supposed to bring to this world? And that's where you should spend your time. And I would bet money that it is connected to this company because I see your passion for it. But what is it? And I said, just get some soul searching, get a coach, get whatever it takes to get there. Because when you do, like it's going to be the clouds will part for you. And he said, okay. And he said, I was just hoping you'd give me an easy answer. And I said, sorry. Sometimes easy answers aren't the right ones. And so, God, I think if just everybody on the planet could figure out what beauty they were supposed to bring to the planet, like, God, like it would just be night and day different. It would just like everything would be different. I think that's my little, I will keep trying to carve that out for my edge of the world where I can help people do that.
That's beautiful. I do think that's one of the best things that, being an implementer has offered me is this sense of really helping other people, and I get to live my life's purpose, which is to help other people discover who they are at a deeper level. And so oftentimes when I'm meeting with teams for the first time, I say things like, I'm here to teach you an operating system to help you become real experts in it, to master this and bring it down into the organization. But actually, I have a secret MO, and that is to help you grow individually. And so that growth, it's what makes life rich. And we get to help with that. And if you're a good coach and you're a good leader and manager, that's sort of what you recognize with your folks, right? Is that you're here to serve, you're here to help them develop and grow as individuals. And that's just so gratifying. If you can make that shift, even if you're not a great manager, you have the more global perspective of we're here to enrich people's lives. I remember feeling a huge sense of responsibility for the livelihoods of the 32 people that worked for me, and literally their lives, um, financial success, futures, things like that. And the weight of responsibility is so great. But I think if you can shift it to you're here, if you serve them, the business will grow, and you'll when the focus comes off of you and me and your ego, it it's just crazy how then you just go as a business.
To that point, Beth, I think that what you got to figure out is how are you best supposed to serve them?
Yeah.
And what does that look like for you? And that is the part that this is where one of my new favorite sayings is where you find paradoxes where the divine lives. I think it's something like that. And it's a Carolyn Mace quote. But what's paradoxical is that they have to figure out truly what's right for them to bring that beauty without it being about them. And so it's very paradoxical. Well, how do I figure out what's right for me and what beauty I'm supposed to bring without it being about me? And so, that's the hard part. And I do think there's this paradox that people struggle with. And I'm literally asking my visionary, you got to figure out what beauty you bring to the world. At the end of the day, it's not about them. And
Mm,
so, but that's that paradox that I think gets confusing. And our entrepreneurs, they have egos, and I don't say ego in a bad way. I think that that's great. They're confident, and they wouldn't be here if they weren't. Sometimes that can be taken too far, and that gets too much about them. To your point, how can they best serve them, their people, is really what we got to find.
yeah. Amazing. What a great lesson. Thank you for sharing that.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
This is great.
We'll be back in just a moment after a word from our sponsors. Let's be honest, hiring the right people is hard. That's why I love Titus Talent Strategies. Their whole person hiring approach helps you find and keep A players who align with your values, and they back it with an industry leading guarantee. Best part? Titus Talent Strategies is included in the Entrepreneurial Toolkit for companies running on EOS. Check them out at titustalent.com/EOS. Do you love running on EOS? Try Streti, the EOS platform people love. Native integrations and extra features help you manage people, projects, process, and engagement. Connected to your favorite EOS tools and all in one place. You love EOS. It's time to love the platform you're running it on. Try Streti free at streti.com. That's STRETY.com. Streti, the EOS platform people love. And now back to my conversation with Jim. I'm going to ask you a question that I ask all of my guests before we go.
Yeah, please. It's good.
And I didn't prep you for this, just like I don't prep anybody else, but
Oh, okay. We'll
all
find out.
right. If you were to get a tattoo
Okay.
on your body
Okay.
that would remind you of the thing that you need to always be mindful of, always be working on, what would the tattoo be and where would you have it?
It's really funny you're saying this because one of my clients yesterday, he got the first part of a sleeve done. So it's up to his elbow and it's gorgeous. It's really beautiful. And I was like, wow, it's really nice. And it's black and green and it's all Irish and Celtic knots. And I just told him yesterday, I don't have any tattoos, so I can't say that I actually have this tattoo. I told him, I said that I think that my tattoo would be some type of Irish knot. I'm Irish in background, upbringing, I guess. What would remind me? So I guess what I'd want it to remind me is to always bring my beauty to the world. So I don't know if Celtic knot is pretty cool, and the infiniteness of the Celtic knot. I don't know if that fits this though. So I just wanted to say it's really funny. I was talking about this yesterday, but I think for some reason what keeps jumping into my head is some ancient symbol or Japanese symbol or something that it's not just English words, but some symbol that just speaks to, and there is a word, God, in Japanese, and I'm not going to,
Ikigai?
what is it?
Ikigai?
I think that might be it. That is, and it's a cool character if I remember correctly, but it actually is all about like living your purpose. That is, yeah, that is. I can never say it right, so I'm glad you said it. What Beth said.
Maybe I said it right. I don't
Oh
know.
yeah, I'm not even going to try. And so I think maybe it would be that symbol because it's all about bringing my purpose and my beauty to the world. So that's what I think it would be.
I love that. Well, thanks so much for this morning chat.
Yeah, this is awesome.
It was fun. Thanks to Jim for sharing his relatable story about finding his beauty and encouragement for you to find yours. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like, subscribe, and share with friends who need to hear this. Thanks for listening to Bad Boss Confessional. We'll see you next week.